If you want access to bonus episodes, reading lists for every series of Empire, a chat community, discounts for all the books mentioned in the week's podcast, ad-free listening, and a weekly newsletter, sign up to Empire Club at www.empirepoduk.com.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Everyone who works at Starbucks, full or part-time, gets stock in our company. Which means that when Starbucks succeeds, our people do too. At Starbucks, benefits like company stock are just the start.
Where's your playlist taking you? Down the highway? To the mountains? Or just into daydream mode while you're stuck in traffic? With over 4,000 hotels worldwide, Best Western is there to help you make the most of your getaway. Wherever that is. Because the only thing better than a great playlist is a great trip. Life's the trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Book direct and save at bestwestern.com.
Hello and welcome to Empire with me, Anita Arnon.
And me, William Durham.
And today we are joined once again by the brilliant Matthew Parker, author of Hell's Gorge. It is a fabulous book to discuss the building of the Panama Canal. So you might remember in the last episode, we were talking about Panama becoming part of Colombia and how the California gold rush of 1848 brought a huge new wave of wealth to the region. And the building of the Panama Railroad was almost necessitated by that rush. We left you with somewhat nutty de Lesseps and his extravagant PR campaign to fund a French attempt to build this canal. And his daughter struck the first symbolic blow with a pickaxe, not to the dam site itself, but a champagne box filled with dirt.
And carrying on with the story, Matthew, can you introduce us to the equally unusual Frenchman with an even more extraordinary moustache? Please tell us about Philippe Jean Bunau-Varilla.
Okay, so he's a French engineer. He's in his sort of early 20s. He went to the elite engineering school in Paris, where you wear a uniform, and the motto is La patrie, les sciences et la gloire, the country, science and glory.
Brilliant motto.
Brilliant motto.
So 19th century.
The whole French story is so 19th century. He's very short. He's 5'4". His father died when he was young. You're right. He has a sort of red moustache with the tips sort of carefully waxed into points.
I mean, you just want to put him straight on a penny farthing is where he belongs. That's where he would feel at home.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the kind of moustache he's got. Yeah.
And people found him, when they met him, a rather sort of eccentric and slightly overwhelming figure. He was very, very intense. This is one report, an American who met him. Mr. Varilla's tremendous mental capacity becomes apparent when one looks at him. His brain rises from an active, rather square face, but as if to contain it, the sides of his head are much larger than his face. So he's odd looking. He's just so intense. Anyway, he'd met Ferdinand de Lesseps in 1880.
I'm just looking at pictures of him. In his youth, he looks like a Prussian general. He's got the full...
Well, I think everyone looked like that in the military sort of academies. Anyway, so he'd met de Lesseps, and he'd clearly been subject to de Lesseps' sort of hairdryer charisma, and he had taken on this great idea of the canal. He spoke not in sentences, but in sort of proclamations.
I love him more and more.
I mean, he was gripped like all these people before had been gripped by the great idea of the canal. He called it the greatest conception the world has ever seen of French genius.
That again sounds like Trump, but with a French spin.
Yeah. So in 1884, by this stage, yellow fever had struck the French project like a hammer blow. It's killing. It's a war zone out there. And some of the French, his teachers at the academy saying to French engineers, look, don't go there. It's really far too risky. But he goes anywhere, and he declares the constant dangers of yellow fever exalted the energy of those who were filled with a sincere love for the great task undertaken. To its irradiating influence was joined the heroic joy of self-sacrifice for the greatness of France.
Right. Okay, I mean, what he's talking about is people in spasms of agony dying in dysentery. I mean, but that's what he sees, which is, it says a lot about him.
He sees a tricolour fluttering over the whole project.
Yeah.
This is something that really struck me when I was researching the French part of the story. It's the amazing sort of bravery and foolhardiness of these young French engineers who went out. There was another one I found called Henri Semoise, and he's a sort of normal, he's one of the sort of ordinary guys. He's not one of the big bosses like the others. He says, look, we knew about the dangers, but it was like a battle. We had to brave it. And he says, I'm going to be hit like a cannonball by the sun. I'm going to face yellow fever nose to nose. And he says, mais bas, mais bas. And you can imagine the sort of Gallic shrug. I mean, what was amazing? So this is a point where 3/4 of the French engineers who go out to Panama are dead within 3 months.
Literally.
Gosh.
But they're still prepared to do it. They're prepared to die for the great idea of the canal.
And one who turns up before too long, as if it isn't French enough, this whole story, George Eiffel himself turns up.
Yes, that's much later. But what happened was basically de Lesseps had to keep raising money. Like any private enterprise, it requires sort of confidence. So he kept having to spend money on the press.
More hot air balloons over Paris, all that sort of thing.
More money. It became known as the Panama check. And something like 2,500 magazines received money from the canal company, including things like Marriage Journal, Forester's Echo. What have they got to do? And some magazines were set up purely to get the Panama check. So if you wanted money, you set up a magazine and then you got this check. So it's becoming more and more desperate. And on the isthmus, the idea of digging a sea level canal soon becomes apparent that it's not possible. For the French, everything that could go wrong goes wrong. There's an earthquake. There's huge floods. There's a civil war at one point on the isthmus where rival factions are actually fighting, and most of Colón gets burnt down, including a lot of equipment. The real problem is yellow fever. And there's this amazing story of a guy called Jules Danglais, basically France's most senior engineer, and he's sent out on a huge salary in 1983. And in order to prove that yellow fever has no fear for him, he brings out his family, his daughter, his son, his daughter's fiancé, and his wife. And at this point, we have to understand, this is before the mosquito theory of transmission has really been understood for yellow fever and for malaria. No one really knows where it comes from.
Are they still thinking miasma? It's something in the air, but something that we can't put our finger on.
Certainly for malaria, it's about miasma, which comes, and obviously if you dig a canal, you're going to release lots of miasma. So that's obviously causing the malaria.
Miasma, for those who don't know, is sort of like infected air. That's, all these diseases were said to be carried in invisible clouds of death that, were mysteriously coming up from somewhere.
Yeah, for yellow fever, it's even more mysterious because it sort of comes and goes. And obviously yellow fever has played a large part in history if we think about America and Haiti and these sort of places. And Barbados at one point was pretty much wiped out by it. And no one knew what it was. Some people said it was a certain wind off the air. One doctor suggested it came from eating apples. But most people thought it was sort of the personal behavior, the sort of morality of the individual.
Too many visits to the brothels.
Exactly. Or filth, and, because it was around ports, they thought it was sort of filth and dead rats and that sort of stuff. Anyway, so Danglais turns up with his entire family. He announces only the drunken and dissipated die of yellow fever. His beautiful little daughter, Louise, who's 18, she becomes the toast of Panama society. She's clearly very charismatic. She's the pride and joy, her mother says, of their family. She gets yellow fever and dies an agonizing death. The next day, Danglais is back at his desk. Then his son dies. And then the fiancé dies. Each time, his duty takes him back to his desk and he's back at work. And then about 6 months later, his wife dies, at which point he breaks. And his entire family has been wiped out.
But not just him. There are 22,000 workers who have also died at this point. Carnage.
It's a mass graveyard.
For all the terrible body count in this story, it is actually a good old sort of political corruption scandal that does for the French. Can you just talk us through what happens and how this dream sort of gets dashed against the rocks?
Yes, well, as I said, de Lesseps keeps sort of issuing bond issues to try and raise money, to try and keep the project going. He's still bribing the French press. By this stage, the Americans and the British are saying, look, this is done for, they're going to go bankrupt. And so he eventually agrees to a sort of lock canal. So they change their plan, at which point Eiffel is hired. And he's a great hire.
Eiffel off the tower.
Obviously.
Belisha Beacon. Boop, boop, boop. Eiffel off the tower.
Yeah, the tower's under construction, and he's well famous. He's paid a lot of money. He starts building locked, and they're going to be temporary locks. We'll still get back to the important sea level canal. But then he issues a lottery bond. So this is a slightly different way to raise money. So it's like a bond issue, but you have sort of numbers on your bonds, and there's every couple of months or every 6 months or so a ticket is drawn, and you can win a lot of money, like 250,000 francs or something like that. And this had saved Suez. When Suez was at a crisis point, it was saved by a lottery bond issue. That was under the emperor, and this is now the Third Republic. Things slightly different. They need government approval. And this takes ages, and there's committees, there's ages. And then they all go on holiday for the whole summer, as they do.
It's France.
So time is running out. And then he tries one more bond issue, and everyone, the sort of the wool is falling from the eyes, even of the most dedicated French investors, most of whom are small investors. A lot of women have sent their children's savings in. This is the little people in France have been the backers of this, not the big investors. But they've given up, and it's declared bankrupt. And then the recriminations begin, and it all starts.
1892, this is.
Yeah. They look at the books, and it all comes out about the bribery. For the lottery issue, the company gave 1 million francs to a minister to vote in its favour. The government falls, ministers are arrested, they resign, the cabinet goes. It's an absolute scandal.
It's a terrific story, this. What a story.
But one of the spiciest details is that, the leaders of the plan, who, de Lesseps, sure, but also they name Eiffel off the tower, and they're given jail sentences, which are later overturned. I mean, this is, the recriminations are serious, and it's a national humiliation. It is a political swamp that is revealed, and it hurts the French psyche for generations to come.
Yes, it's a humiliation up there with, the Franco-Prussian War. I think Charles de Lesseps actually does spend some time in prison. He's the son, and he was a director of the company.
Oh, the one who kept saying, "Don't do it, Dad. You're too old."
Yeah. But the Ferdinand himself, he sort of checks out. He sits in an armchair with a 3-week-old newspaper on his lap. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's taken into the trial. He puts on his Légion d'honneur uniform, and he doesn't really understand what's happening. And he goes back and he says, I had this terrible dream that we were on trial somewhere.
Oh dear.
So he's sort of, and what happens, just to sort of fill in the little gaps. A lot of the people like Eiffel, also like Bunau-Varilla, they are forced. I mean, Eiffel made something like 7 million francs on doing not very much. It was, the whole thing was corrupt. All the contractors, they were bribing the inspectors. On the isthmus itself, corruption was completely rife. They were all drinking too much. They would have champagne for breakfast to stop the les microbes. And it was really, an absolute sink of corruption, as the Americans would describe it. Anyway, so some of these people who had made ridiculous profits, everyone said, where's this money gone? 1 billion francs had been spent.
And how much had been dug by this point of the bankruptcy? How many miles of canal is there?
They've made a start.
Not very much, is there? A lot of champagne and not much canal.
They've done a lot of dredging, sort of on the river, the river bits and so on. They've really only, because the real challenge is the continental divide, is the mountain range you've got to cut through. And that will be, and there's a 9-mile stretch there, which was known as the Culebra Cut. That's the real challenge for any canal builder in Panama.
So this corruption scandal, this bankruptcy in Paris, it's completely tanked the building of the canal. Join us after the break to see what happens next in Panama.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, "It's my classroom, you're just learning in it." And preppy polos that say, "I'm the teacher's pet," even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by the world's first reposado from Tequila Herradura. Made with slow-cooked, hand-harvested agave sealed into oak barrels and aged 11 months. Before being enjoyed in your glass. Experience the world's first reposado. Tequila Herradura. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Tequila Herradura. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Herradura is a registered trademark. Copyright 2025 Brown-Forman Corporation.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, how to get 30, how to get 20, 20, 20, how to get 20, 20, how to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome back. Before the break, we discussed how the French attempt flopped in a complete humiliation and corruption scandal. But what happened to the workers?
Yes, if we go to Panama, we'll see that most of the huge workforce have sort of gone, a lot of them in extreme poverty. They have to be shipped out by the Jamaican government.
Are the lots that are totally unpaid, and have they been working on arrears?
Yes, exactly right. So they're sort of starving, basically, and desperate. I mean, some of the Jamaicans, because it's mainly Jamaicans who are the workforce for the French effort. Some of them go off to other parts of South America or Central America to do other jobs. I mean, they're great sort of emigrators, the West Indians, as I'm sure you know. But what happens at the trial is that the people who'd made ridiculous amounts of money from bribes and so on had been forced to invest in what was called the New Company, the New Canal Company, which was a sort of holding sort of body. And they did some sort of desultory work on the isthmus, but really they were still desperate. People like Bunau-Varilla, he still wanted the canal built. He was one of the people, they were called penalty investors. And one of the stipulations was that they should have nothing to do with the canal.
Give us the money and get lost.
Yeah, you're tainted. We don't want anything to do with you. So what they've got to do is they've got to basically try and sell the canal or get a new investor in the canal to keep it going. And the obvious one is to sell it to the Americans. But there's a big problem. The Americans are set on a canal at Nicaragua.
Which is much longer?
Yes, it's longer. It's the San Jose River, goes up to Lake Nicaragua, and then there's a sort of steep descent down the other side. The American engineers favored this over Panama, mainly because of the problem in Panama of the river. There's this river Chagres in Panama, which is one of the most volatile in the world. And this is another one of the main problems that the French face. Panama, for some reason, is one of the wettest places on earth. 5 inches of rain can fall in a couple of hours. So this river can rise and sweep everything away. And also, the canal has to be obviously at the lowest point of the valley. So it has to drain the area. So it has to be a sort of canal and a river, which does not work for navigation. So that was the reason why the Americans rejected Panama in favor of Nicaragua. So Bunau-Varilla and the New Company have a big challenge on their hands. They have to persuade the Americans to change their minds and to buy them out. Otherwise, the New Company is worthless and all of those lives have been for nothing. And this is when Bunau-Varilla really flexes his brilliance, along with another man called William Cromwell, who is an American Wall Street lawyer. And he is taken on by the New Company to represent their interests in New York. And the two of them get to work really on one of history's most extraordinary lobbying campaigns.
Mm-hmm. And when you say, it's one of history's most extraordinary lobbying campaigns, what does it look like? Whose doors are they knocking on? Are they, again, buying up influence as they did in France with the old company?
They do the obvious things. They write to all the senators. There's various sort of commissions and committees in America to do with the canal, with lots of distinguished members. So they lobby them. And Bunau-Varilla, he's the master of the chance encounter.
Right.
So when he's in Paris, he's already befriended an American called John Bigelow, who's quite well connected. So Americans passing through Paris somehow meet him, and he gives them the sort of the sort of laser treatment on Panama. He has this spiel and he pins them down and he doesn't stop until they've changed their minds. And he's brilliant at this. And with good reason, though Panama has a lot of advantages over Nicaragua. But he's this persuader extraordinaire. And then he gets himself invited to a conference in Cleveland and he spends 3 months traveling around America, lecturing. He's bought a newspaper in order to promote Panama. He writes a book. He does everything possible. And again, the master of the chance encounter, even though in theory he's supposed to have nothing to do with the canal company.
Right. And just to remind people, I mean, he's 5'4". He has this enormous moustache, which is wax tipped and sort of fiery red, although I guess it's greying quite quickly after this experience. But he's sort of charm personified, just like de Lesseps was. So you've got these two sort of, very forceful figures. One has fallen by the wayside and is living in a fog of dementia. But Bunau-Varilla, I guess, is really popular in America because they love a personality in America. I mean, how successful is he at charming people?
Yes. I don't think he's used humour. I don't think humour was one of his weapons. But he's got this intensity. He's got this passion for, when Americans said, I love someone with a passion. And it's consumed him. He's absolutely, this is his whole life. And he does manage to meet some very influential people. And there's an amazing story of him at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. And he's, according to his account, he's just going for a breath of fresh air about midnight. Oh, and in the lobby, he bumps into an American friend who happens to be with a guy called Mark Hanna, who is an incredibly influential Republican politician and has the ear of President McKinley, who was the president at the time. And he gives him the treatment, the Panama treatment, and he converts him. So that's brilliant. And then he hangs around a bit longer, and you can kind of imagine him with his small size, sort of hiding behind a potted palm in the sort of atrium.
I love it.
And then he pops out again, and he meets someone who gets him an introduction to McKinley himself. So he gets right to the top, and he's, with his Panama spiel, and he's starting to change minds. Meanwhile, Cromwell the lawyer is being a bit more direct. He goes to see Mark Hanna and he just puts $60,000 down on the table as a party donation.
A really brown envelope thing. Wow.
And while all this is going on, McKinley is particularly interested in Panama because of changes in the local politics. Take us through that.
McKinley has a real interest, a special interest in the Trans-Isthmian Canal because things have changed, obviously, since the 1880s. The United States now has possessions, in Hawaii, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and effectively Cuba.
This is all stuff we've done last year on the pod. And if anyone wants to hear more about how America collected those colonies, you can look at Empire Pod episodes 166 to 169 in our backlist.
With fabulous Daniel Immerwahr.
This is a sort of turning point in American politics, obviously, when they're suddenly taking on colonies and so on. And there was an incident in the Spanish War where the premium battleship, bear in mind the United States has no real navy to speak of at this point, but the premium battleship, the Oregon, is in San Francisco. And it needs to get to Cuba to fight in a decisive battle. And it has to go 8,000 miles. It takes 67 days to go round the Cape of Horn. And all the time, the press in the US are following its progress, reporting where it is. And there cannot be a better demonstration of the military importance of a Trans-Isthmian Canal. And so for the Americans, this is the most important thing about breaking through that barrier. It's so that they can move warships between the two oceans.
Right. And there's another thing you touched on in the last episode, which is sort of mindset, that the French had made a big deal of, this is our service to humanity. We are French. We are great. We are giving this gift to the world. The Americans have made no pretense of, we're making this for ourselves because it'll be really helpful to us.
Yes. There's none of that sort of, the idealism that we've seen in the story so far is, some people, obviously think it would be a good thing for world trade, but it would be a particularly good thing for American trade so that, the manufacturing goods of the East Coast can get to China. Obviously, the China market has been in session throughout history, and the agricultural produce of the West can get to Europe. This will be transformative for American commerce. But I think it's the military is the most important thing, and that really hits home with the public who have been following the Oregon on its epic voyage. So McKinley is keen on a Trans-Isthmian Canal, not necessarily one in Panama, which is what Bunau-Varilla wants to sell, so he gets his money back, but an Isthmian Canal of some sort. But gradually, Cromwell and Bunau-Varilla managed to convert more and more people in the sort of high ups in Washington to Panama rather than Nicaragua. And it all comes down to a vote in the Senate. And very happily for Bunau-Varilla, there's quite a large volcanic explosion in Martinique, which kills lots of people, and it's a sort of new sensation.
Just a moment.
Okay, back up.
Go through this. Those two things aren't automatically linked.
Back the heck up, mate.
Yes, okay.
Then we're talking 1902, right? So there's a volcanic eruption.
30,000 dead.
How this could possibly be good news for the little man with the red moustache.
Yeah.
Cromwell and Bunau-Varilla exploit this tragedy. Is that better? Exploit this tragedy.
Yes, better.
In order to sort of change minds about Nicaragua versus Panama. And lots of people in America was obsessed with Nicaragua as Bunau-Varilla was with Panama. So it's a really hard job. But then they point out that there's volcanoes in Nicaragua. And there's a report which turns out to be entirely untrue that one's erupted. This is sort of blown away. But at the crucial moment before the vote, Bunau-Varilla has this inspiration. He remembered this one Saintivo Nicaraguan stamp, which had the majestic bulk of Mount Momotombo in the background and a wharf in the front. And the artist, in a sort of artistic flourish, had added a little bit of smoke coming out of this basically extinct volcano, which is 100 miles from the canal route anyway. But Bunau-Varilla goes around all the philatelists of Washington, collecting and buying as many of these as he can, and he sends them to all the senators as evidence of the...
Brilliant.
And it swings it.
And this, we should remember, is less than 20 years after the explosion of Krakatoa, which was one of the kind of greatest seismic event of recent centuries.
Yeah, but just to stress, this volcano was absolutely no threat to the canal, but this man is a genius, because if he thinks that they will see it with their own eyes on a stamp, and stamps don't lie, why are you going to pour money in a place where a volcano can swallow up your investment and melt it into a lump of ashes thanks to lava? I mean, that's and it works. You said it works.
It works, and it's squeaked through for Panama. And all they had to do now was buy out the French company and do a deal with Colombia. They bought it for $40 million, which includes the concession and everything, all the sort of French plants and everything like that. It's a lot of money. A huge amount of money. I mean, Louisiana purchase was a lot less.
But I mean, a lot of money compared to the French investment. Do they, even break even with this kind of deal? I mean, you said it was, 1 billion francs?
No, that's gone.
So that's all disappeared. So this is just a recoupment. And it is, you say, substantial. More than they thought they would get.
Well, they originally asked for $100 million.
Okay. Less than they thought they would get. Okay.
And this was really, this was one of the things that was swinging it Nicaragua's way, that huge expense. So Cromwell has words with the boss of the new company in Paris and says, look, come on. And he agrees to take it down to 40, which is still, as I said, a huge amount of money. And there's all sorts of shenanigans going on. I mean, it came out later that, some of Cromwell's friends had bought new company stock at a sort of bargain basement rates and then made a huge profit. So there's all sorts of shenanigans going on.
Couldn't possibly happen today.
Shocker.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the meantime, McKinley, of course, has been assassinated, and Teddy Roosevelt, the vice president, is the unexpected new president. And he, in his first presidential address, also really stresses that he wants a canal, and this is going to be something that's going to really demonstrate to the world America's, industrial might. Yeah.
And Teddy Roosevelt, as we know from our previous series, is a man who's very keen on pushing America's footprint all over South America and the region. He's not afraid of foreign adventures at all.
And apparently, on his mother's side, descended from one of the survivors of the Darien disaster.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
We didn't know that.
Scott's blood, Anita, gets everywhere, you see?
Yes, it does.
So he's set on Panama, and they buy out the French company, and now they have to do a deal with Colombia. Now, one of the things that the Americans are insisting on is a canal zone and complete control over a sort of 10-mile wide strip around the proposed route of the canal, to the extent where they have American sovereignty over that strip.
Oh, right, okay. So I'm sure the Colombians have something to say about that, because that is a land grab by a different means. If you're going to put your own flag up there, it's not yours anymore.
That's right. The Colombians had just emerged from a long and very bloody civil war, and there was a certain amount of sort of confusion, I guess, and they had very little communication with for instance, their ambassador in Washington. But they're presented with this plan, and first of all, they say, well, aren't we due some of this $40 million? At which point Roosevelt goes, they're blackmailers. He has no respect at all for, non-Americans in Latin America, it has to be said.
Yeah, and we should stress, this is not just a cosmetic thing that you have to do a deal with the Colombians, because at this moment in time, Panama is still part of Colombia.
Absolutely. But the Colombians, they've seen the Americans, take over parts of the Caribbean. They've seen them sort of put their power tentacles out. And they've seen Roosevelt announces that he's going to be the policeman of Latin America, with his big stick. And it's all incredibly patronizing and, humiliating for them. Also, they have something in their constitution that forbids them from giving up sovereignty of any part of their country. So they're never going to get a deal with the Colombians. So Roosevelt has his Secretary of State, John Hay. They have a sort of choice. What are they going to do in order to get the Panama Canal? And they can't wait around because there's an election coming up. And you want to have this, the canal deal as part of your platform.
I have in my hand a piece of paper that gives us a shortcut that you've all been dying for.
Exactly. So they have three choices, really. One is just to invade Panama. And Roosevelt sends spies to go and check that out and see how that's going to, what the plans for that would be. One is to continue dealing with Colombians, who Roosevelt's now calling inefficient bandits. The other is to do a deal not with Colombia, but with an independent Panama.
I know this is a tense moment to end the episode on, but do join us in the next episode to find out how America starts a pattern that it will repeat for years to come, meddling with Central and South American politics for the sake of, America.
And may I take a moment in the style of the Bunau-Varilla campaign to you listeners that if you want to listen to that episode right now, as well as get ad-free listening, bonus episodes and much more, then join our club. Head to empirepoduk.com. That's empirepoduk.com to sign up. And if there was a stamp to convince you to join the club, I would send it to you. But for now, it's goodbye from me, William Dalrymple, just to do it in unusual order.
Yeah, weird. Oh, don't like it. And goodbye from me, Anita Arnand.